Alright, so good day class. So I think last week we discussed about the Mesopotamian or Babylonian civilization and their relation to planning. So for this week, let's talk about Egypt. So I think you're already familiar with this with your architectural history. So this is just a brief review. So let's look at the Egyptian kingdoms. So you have here Lower Egypt. Then looking at Lower Egypt, you have the Sinai here. Then you have here the Western Desert, the Eastern Desert. So I think you have here cities such as Memphis, Merimda, Abydos, and Thebes. The Mediterranean Sea here. Then you have here the Red Sea. So tombs are the central figures of Egyptian town planning in the ancient times. So if you remember your architectural history, the first architect was Imhotep. So mostly when you talk about Egyptian architecture, so it's like tomb architecture because they consider the afterlife. Um, I think it's part of the planning. What they think about is the afterlife. So let's look at the physical base. First example is the city of Kahun. So modern name is El Lahun, which means worker city. So this is its physical base here. The example of how they did the planning. So maybe you could see that it's just regular. You could see rectangular shapes and grid patterns. Then for the economic base, it's workers reliant on salary goods. For example, bread, meat, grains, and clothing. For the political base, of course, the pharaoh is the most powerful person, and the pharaoh relies also on military power to enforce his policies. The social base is that you have complex belief systems and rituals, the defense of goods, and the rise of complex governments. So the city of Kahun or worker city, so it is home to the artisans and workers of the Ilahon pyramid. So that's the pyramid of Sinusret II. So it was abandoned after the pyramids are completed. So it's also referred to as a necropolis or the city for the dead. So the site is predominantly made of mud bricks, has a rectangular shape around 350 meters by 400 meters. It's walled around its perimeter. You can see that here and divided according to class. Okay, you could see that the higher class they are nearer the temple for worship, and then the workers they are more at the outskirts. So I think in ancient times it's more common to see a division between class. Right now in our modern times, we try to make sure that um, everything is inclusive already. But in those times, you could really see the division. Like here, they have the high class. It's near the temple, so they could pray to their temple and to their gods during those times. And the workers, they are further away, maybe because they are given less importance. So I've here the high class. It's for the rich residential area. So the rich residential area, the artisans residences. So when you talk about artisans, these are the people that in those times they're probably the more educated ones compared to the workers who are probably just the laborers for the project. So when you talk about artisans, they're the ones who have skills and talents. So it's approximately 2,700 square meters, and approximately there are 60 houses. So here, if you look at here at the, if you're going to magnify it, the high class is really near the temples, while the workers they're really far away. So there's a discrimination. Then we have here the poor residential area. That's approximately 44 square meters. Maybe it's For each house, it's 44 square meters. So it's typical with two rooms on the ground floor, access to the flat roof for living and storage spaces. So I think right now, um, you could, especially as Asians, we like to live in small spaces, especially if you look at some of the condos that are selling. You could see condos that are being sold at 36 square meters and some at 44, especially if it's studio type. Okay, but those times, if you live in a small house, then maybe you're just an ordinary workman or laborer, so you're considered poor. While those who are living in bigger spaces, um, they are the rich and affluent of that period. But even if there's a division in class, you could see, maybe if you just look at the hierarchy, that those who are in the temple, the priests, they are the highest in the social structure. Okay, because they are the ones that are serving the gods for them. So this is the present day ruins of the Pyramid of Sinusred. So 9-meter streets over the city laid out in straight lines, and there are 1.5 alleys with ends as cul-de-sacs. Then the three streets had drainage systems made of stone running through the middle. So it's really amazing, guys, that even if these were ancient times, that they already have an idea of doing drainage systems or having a drainage network during that period. Okay, you could also make further observations that the Pyramid of Sinusret is not the same as the three pyramids of Giza that you see, which has a perfect um, triangular shape on a square base. So it's not yet that perfect. Maybe they're still trying to, at this period, they're still trying to develop the technique in building the pyramids. But in terms of similarity, um, the focus is the afterlife. Okay? So after Egypt, let's look at ancient China. We have Longxiao, Langshan, and Shijiahe. Sorry, I don't know how to speak Chinese. So we have here the walled city of Shijiahe, China. So I have here Yangshan, Longshan, Shijiahe, Liangzhu, and Baodun. So defense and order influenced Chinese civilizations or urban congregations of this time. So when you talk about Chinese, first let's look at Egyptians. When you talk about Egyptians, they look into the afterlife, while the Chinese, they're more into uh, defense and order. So it's probably due to attacks on them. You can see that maybe I'm not really sure if this was during the three kingdoms rule in China, but China entered a warring state phase wherein there are three kingdoms that compete for domination. Then they also have borders. Here, I think Genghis Khan is in the Mongolia also. The the Mongols, they're also a threat. That's why maybe the Chinese have a strong consideration for defense in the planning of their cities. So this is the histomap of the 4,000 years of world history. So settlements evolve the size of its territory uh, through time. For example, here from 1700 BC for the Aegeans. Okay. Then here for the Egyptians, they started the small one, and then they have the Middle Egyptian period at 2000 BCE, and they have a bigger area. And then the Hittites, the Amorites, Iranians, Indians, Huns, and the Chinese. So relative power of contemporary states, nations, and empires. So if you look at this in 1750 to 1700 to 1750 BC, the most powerful probably were the Amorites, which is almost unequal with the Egyptians. But at 1950 to 2000 BC, I think the Egyptians dominated everyone. If you look at the settlements, the evolution of the settlements. So based on this historiographic. Now let's go into the Greek civilizations. So we have here Greece, then Macedonia, where Alexander the Great came. Then this is the Aegean Sea, Thrace, this is Asia Minor. So you can't really deny the influence of Greece in early civilization. So they are the ones who first developed the concept of democracy. Okay. However, even if they thought about democracy, doesn't mean that they don't have slavery. Because for them, democracy is for their citizens and equality for them. But they still view, I think, non-Greeks as barbarians during that period. So let's look at the physical base of the Greek city-state. So for the physical base, you could see that it has a gridiron layout. So it's characterized by the democratic political structure of its country. Centrality of the urban area was towards the houses and the community facilities. For example, the agora or public market. Then the economic base. So the jobs were the traders, sailors, mercenaries, trades, and agriculture. For the political base, it's known for democracy, although some of the city-states were tagged for monarchy, aristocracy, even tyranny. So when I think about tyranny, the first state that comes into my mind is Sparta. Aristocracy, maybe it's Athens. Social base, it's military or discussing politics. So the theater for entertainment. So the lives of women in ancient Greece were closely tied to domestic work, spinning, weaving, and other domestic duties. So ancient Greece embodied three types of city-states throughout the phases. So first is the religion or the monarchy centered within the city planning, with the city planning focus on the Acropolis. So settlements clustered around the Acropolis, both for military protection brought by religious beliefs. Second is the Agora. So gradually, Greece shifted from a religious society to an aristocratic democratic rule, thus shifting the city center to the Agora. So the first center of the Greece was the Acropolis when they were just like the Egyptians. Um, in a sense, the Egyptians were thinking about their deities. Okay. So at this period, the Greeks were also thinking of their deities. So the center was the Acropolis. So as they shifted, the city center, shifted to the Agora or the market. So we have here the Sparta, which is predominantly a farming state with focus on military control or martial law. So a citadel is a defensive fortress. Okay, just move the slide. So let's look at the difference between Athens and Sparta. When you talk about Athens, it talks about education, democracy, stronger education, more freedom in society. Didn't decide the fate of children. While Sparta, it have the military, it's an oligarchy, so there's less freedom in society. Then society decides the fate of its children, mainly because I think all children in Sparta they become warriors. So there was a point in time in the history of Greece that Athens and Sparta rivaled each other. So Athens is best known for its democratic structure. So Greek democracy paved the way for hardworking individuals to establish an economic foothold, expand ownership, become rich and the elite. So the Greek city polis came under the influence of the elite. So you note the vibrance and variety of the city-state map. Then Athenian men were considered adults when they have completed a 2-year military service. So once they are adults, they acquire a capacity to participate in public forums where issues relevant to the society are decided upon. So Athens practiced the world's first democracy. So metrios, so citizenship, an Athenian citizen, usually a middle-income adult who is content with a little money and lived properly. So in modern times, how many of us are contented with little money? So we have here Athens, so the Agora and its environs. So note that the transfer of the city center from the Citadel Acropolis to the Agora. So the Agora as an avenue for discussing arts, politics, belief systems, philosophies, knowledge, information and education as critical to the formation of an opinion or decision that affects the society. Okay. Right, so I think this is the remains of the theater at Pergamon. Okay. So I'm not so sure if this was see if this is the same theater that was considered to have a perfect acoustical system, when even if you stand here here at the bottom, they could still hear you here at the top because it's just a really nice acoustics. So an Athenian as a Pinks is an Athenian assembly hall, literally where democracy was first practiced, usually situated on the peripheries for terrain considerations and the large population size going to and from the city center. So this is Stoa here. If you look at the I think there's a problem with my mouse, guys. So this is the public forum or the agora. So Stoa is an Athenian colonnade, part of the agora, where much of the discussions took place. So here you could notice that in Athens, it already shifted. Um, the center shifted from the Acropolis to the agora. So note that this type of Greek city planning was before the time of Hippodamus of Miletus. So the pre-Hippodamian planning was considered organic and responded to the needs of the state. Okay, but the question is who is Hippodamus of Miletus? So when you say that it's organic, so it's something that gradually grows over time. So it's less formal. So Hippodamus of Miletus observed the Sumerian and Egyptian cities and proposed a gridiron pattern for Greece. So no more than 10,000 residents in a city to be able to continue providing food and water and to maintain hygiene. So that's the plan. Then develop the concept for the agora or the central marketplace, which was the commercial center of the city. So he perceived the agora as distinct from the pinks or the city's political forum. So this is the figure, the Hippodamian town plan. So grid iron around the commercial areas, the Hellenistic classical town. So this was the plan for the Hippodamus plan for Anatolia, Turkey. So we could see that it's quite formal. It's grid iron in nature. The center is the agora. Okay. So you've heard the plan of Piraeus. So this is the description of Aristotle of the plan of Hippodamus. So his system was for a city with a population of 10,000 divided into three classes, where he made one class of artisans, one of farmers, and third the class that fought for the state in war and was the armed class. So when you do you remember when the slide that I showed you about Egypt? So they separated also the workers, the artisans, and the priest. So for this one, the it's also three classes. The first one are for the farmers, also the artisans, also they're considered highly, and then another class which is the warrior class or the armed class. So he divided the land into three parts: one sacred, one public, and one private. Sacred land supplied the customary offerings to the gods, common land to provide the warrior class with food, and private land to be owned by the farmers. So let's talk about suburbanization. So in ancient times, an indication of a city deterioration characterized by the mass migration of urbanites to the peripheries of the city for a more affordable, healthy environment. So a phenomenon that first happened in Greece when its urban spaces exceeded Hippodamus' recommendation of the maximum 10,000 pax population cutoff. So if it's already more than the if you're already beyond the cut of the 10,000, so they usually move to the peripheries of the city because it's more affordable. If you think about this, guys, in the context of the modern era, when you go to Manila, the cost of living is much higher since it's the capital of the Philippines. But when you go to the provinces, it becomes a lot cheaper, and I think the air is also cleaner and with lesser people as well. So throughout the time of the Greeks, several evolutions has gone in the urban settlements in the east. So in the east, we have the Chu dynasty from 1027 to 256 BC, Shin dynasty 221 to 206 BC, Han dynasty 206 BC to 220 AD. So this is the beginnings of the Great Wall. Shi Huangdi as the first official emperor, the unification of the warring states, and Xi'an as the capital. So because laws of order and society were fundamentally different in the East, scholars posit that the formation or evolution of urban spaces in the East was also fundamentally different from that of the West. So when you think about the West, I think the best example is the Greek civilization, which we discussed earlier. So the Chinese dynasty at the time of the Greeks, they have the hundred schools of thought, Confucianism and Taoism. So this emergence of rigid social structures resulted to rigid spatial planning in the Chinese city-state. Chinese society was often rigid, patriarchal, and clearly delineated. Note that there are no evidences of the knowledge transfers from the West to the East during this time. So I could only imagine that maybe if there was an interaction, it's not something that's the same as what's happening now in the modern times. The absence of technology or, or innovations and communications. So there's a possibility that there's really less interaction between the East and the West. But nevertheless, both civilization prospered, and then there are similarities and differences as well. Okay, so let's look at here the Shin Dynasty Shanyang Palace. So here we have the residential suburbs. This is the Changi Palace, the Weiyang Palace, Han Dynasty in Chang'an. So you should note you said that Qin Dynasty and Han Dynasty. Note that the straight lines and the importance of symmetry as influenced by the principles of yin and yang. Okay, so let's end this here. Let's talk about the Roman civilization next meeting, guys. I'm going to post our activities for this week. If further questions or clarifications, um, you can reach me anytime and I'll answer to your queries. But I'll be posting our Padlet activities for the week. Okay, so see you next time.